Thanks for checking out this horror debate series video. So very quickly, for people who don't know about this, get my pick for the worst horror subgenre right here. Then follow the link in the description to your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete's channel, where he will have a video with the same name and he will have his pick there. Watch that. Then you can come back to my channel if you want. Go to the community tab and vote for who you think had the best pick or the best justifications or whatever. And you can even choose for a tie, because some people really wanted that. So anyway, getting into it, my pick for the worst horror subgenre. This will not be a big surprise to people who watch my channel a decent amount, because I've been very vocal about how I really don't like this subgenre. But before I tell you which one I have picked, I will tell you the other one I considered heavily, which is possession films. I really do not like the possession subgenre because it's extremely boring. A lot of it feels very samesies, but ultimately that's not what I chose. What I chose as my main pick for this is found footage. Now, disclaimer, I know there are a lot of people out there who love found footage, Uncle Pete included. He loves found footage films, and I get it. I understand why people do. So you're not necessarily going to agree that it's the worst subgenre in horror, but you will understand based off this video why it's my worst subgenre. Because let's be honest, all these opinions are just opinions, which is why we love hearing from you guys. What would you say is the worst subgenre of horror films in your opinion? And it can be as broad or as specific as you want it to be. Go ahead and put it in the comments. And you can leave the same comment on my video as you do on his video, because we don't usually cross over and read each other's comments, so that's totally good. So anyway, let me talk about found footage. First of all, I want to give a little bit of a definition to it. This is what I found through Wikipedia. Found footage is a cinematic technique in which all or a substantial part of the work is presented as if it were film or video recordings recorded by characters in the story and later found and presented to the audience. The events on screen are typically seen through the camera of one or more of the characters involved, often accompanied by their real-time off-camera commentary. For added realism, the cinematography may be done by the actors themselves as they perform, and shaky camera work and naturalistic acting are routinely employed. The footage may be presented as if it were raw and complete, or as if it had been edited into a narrative by those who found it. So just an establishment of what we're really talking about here, which I know a lot of people did not need that, but for some people who did. Found footage for me, my big bullet point for this film is the pacing is always terrible. I am big on having good pacing in horror films, well, films in general, but horror films are what I watch the most of. So specifically horror films, I want really good pacing. By definition of what the subgenre is, there's typically going to be bad pacing. There are a few found footage films that did maintain really good pacing, and I thought were really good films themselves. Like Lake Mungo was a really good one, but that one's kind of different than a lot of the other found footage films. Host, I think, was another one, but that was also under an hour runtime, so they really did a great job of figuring out, hey, we don't need to take an hour and a half for a movie because that's what people normally think a movie should be. We'll just take as long as we need to. And I brought this example up so many times on my channel as to what we should be doing for film is telling the story in the time that is needed to tell the story, not trying to hit a specific runtime. But found footage a lot of times is trying to hit that runtime when they have terrible pacing typically. So that's one of my biggest issues, is that by definition of what this subgenre is, typically the pacing is going to be very bad. It's very slow, it's very meandering, it's very plotting. You're getting a lot of the extra dialogue between characters that you don't typically get in other types of films, because other films, it's literally understood that you're only seeing portions of the story. With found footage, they have to show you the entirety of things because of what the film is for the most part. Unless you're doing it like a film like Lake Mungo, where they basically set it up as a journalistic piece. And actually Rec ended up doing that in the beginning as well, but then it kind of changed. But yeah, so it gives you the idea that it is intentionally edited because it's like on TV as like a investigative journalism piece. But Pacing, very bad. My next point is, going along with the pacing issue, there's typically not much story since the type of film calls for it to be meandering by nature. Because it's supposed to show so much that you typically don't see in a film, there's usually not a lot of story to it. And the pace at which things happen that are intriguing with the film is typically very slow as well, which adds to that whole pacing issue. But again, there are these exceptions, like Wreck, I think, did an outstanding job, actually. But that's just one example. It's very uncommon that I find found footage films that are as tightly done as something like Wreck or like a Lake Mungo. But those are the two I'm going to keep doing. And also, I'll even say, like, think about the Blair Witch Project. I know that the Blair Witch Project was the big film that really made found footage popular. It wasn't the first found footage film. There have been many prior to it. Just to name one, Cannibal Holocaust was one, and it goes even further back. But the Blair Witch Project, sorry, lost train of thought for a minute. Blair Witch Project is what really popularized it. At the time, it was something new. It was something very different. People thought, oh, maybe this is real. If you watch that film now for what it is severely boring for the most part. As like an actual, like in the pantheon of films, it's very boring, it's very slow, it's very meandering, it's very plotting, and it doesn't have the same impact, and it doesn't have the same rewatch value. That was kind of like a one and done film. Now, it's an important film because of how it really changed the landscape of film, and it was very interesting that they did what they did, those filmmakers, but it doesn't hold up. That's another thing. A lot of found footage films really don't hold up that well because they are so slow and meandering. Plenty of very shaky camera work, which can bother some people. I will say the film Cloverfield, while it is a very interesting concept and premise, it made me nauseous at times because of how severe the shaky camera work is. And that's because it was needed for the story. The story was about people running from this giant kaiju that's destroying the city. I get that. It's a cool idea, but in execution, for people like me at least, unwatchable. I literally had to look away from the screen so many times because all that shaky movement was making me literally feel sick. Like I would potentially throw up. And there's really no need to make films like that, in my opinion. Like I said, good premise. The execution, terrible. Now, there may be some other people out there who that sort of stuff doesn't bother them as much, and I hope that is the case, because then you can watch this stuff. But even for me personally, like, even a kind of shaky camera in film bothers me, because we have the ability, as far as film goes, to, like, keep things relatively straight. Now, there are some found footage films that it's not as shaky, but by definition of what the subgenre is, it's typically going to be shaky to some degree, and that's very annoying, at the least, for people like me. It's tricky to craft a premise that fully works and keep the camera showing what the audience should end up seeing while explaining how it's being seen in a realistic manner. So basically, the filmmaker needs to set up a premise where they can make sure that the audience is going to see everything on screen that they want them to see for the impact of the story and the impact of the film as a whole, but also set it up in the situation where that feels realistic. Because it can't be a situation where you're seeing a shot from, like, the side of characters and it doesn't look like anyone's holding the camera. You have to figure out how that camera is incorporated into every single scene. What character is going to be using it, or is it coming from security footage or something like that, or a computer in the case of the film like Host. These things need to be thought about a lot, and the audience then is even more apt to kind of look for these inconsistencies and those types of shooting issues. I have seen those in found footage films before. Nothing pops to mind right off the bat as to any examples, but I've definitely seen it a few times before. My next point is dialogue is typically not very engaging because it's time wasting for the most part. Again, I'm going to say with other films, the boring dialogue just is not shown. It is edited out so that it is an entertaining experience. For found footage, you have to keep it for the purpose of realism, because you're telling one linear story, typically, with what found footage films are. And it's just, getting back to my whole point of why I'm calling this the worst subgenre is a lot of the trappings of this subgenre, a lot of the tropes that go along with it equal bad filmmaking from a traditional standpoint, albeit. And like I said, there are people who are going to enjoy that, but if you think about it, bad pacing, typically not good for film. Shaky camera work, typically not good for film. Meandering story, typically not good for film. Really boring, pointless dialogue, typically not good for film. So, by definition, this is a bad, it is the worst genre because it's the least cinematic. It's the least of a movie. I'm starting to ramble, but I'll just give you my final point, which is there are not enough really good found footage films for me to consider the subgenre actually a good subgenre. Now, that said, I've obviously given some examples of ones that are quite good, but they're very few and far between. I think found footage for me works best with the kind of like VHS anthology way of presenting it, because it's a lot easier to make the pacing better in those. And even some of those, the pacing still sucks. So anyway, those are all my arguments for why I think found footage is the worst horror subgenre. Again, I would love to hear your comments on what you think is the worst and why. Like a sentence or two would be cool. Go ahead and put it down there. Hit the thumbs up on this video and Uncle Pete's video. We would appreciate that. Also, subscribe to both our channels to support us. That's your best way to show that you enjoy anything that we've been doing here. We do appreciate everyone getting involved with this. And I know a lot of people have had fun with the voting, and it is fun. It's cool to see how people are going with it. Go ahead and hit the notification bell button on both our channels, and then you'll know when we are putting up new videos, which we're doing a good amount. But anyway, thank you everyone so much for your time. It is much appreciated. And until next time, keep it brutal.